Welcome to the next session of our International SEL Day Summit. We hope you've been enjoying some of the earlier sessions. I'm Jim Vetter. I am the Executive Director of the Social Emotional Learning Alliance for the United States. Along with the Urban Assembly and our international partner, 6 Seconds, we are the folks who are organizing this amazing SEL Day celebration that's happening around the world. We are so glad you're with us. Let us know who you are right now. So go over into the chat and please type in the chat. Let us know your location, where in the country or where in the world are you? Let us know your organization and let us know your role or title. So feel free to go ahead and type those in the chat right now. As I go ahead and thank our SEL Day sponsors. So please go and visit between your sessions. Please go to selday.org/exhibit and learn more about these fabulous SEL Day sponsors. We have Antioch University, Second Step, Pure Edge, Harmony Academy at National University. We have Responsive Classroom and Fly 5. We have Ruler at the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence and Satchel Pulse. And we'd like to give a special thank you to Antioch University as our advocate sponsor. Antioch University's mission is to provide learner-centered education, to empower students with the knowledge and skills to lead meaningful lives and to advance social, racial, economic, and environmental justice. And Antioch University has partnered with 6 Seconds and has one of the very few SEL, specifically SEL and social justice focused doctoral programs in the world. So please go to their exhibit and learn more about who they are and what they do. And let's take a look at who you got from around the country right now. I see that we have Kate is from San Diego. I see we have Stephanie from Indiana. And you can just put these up on the screen as I say them. We've got Kate, who's a social work intern. Deborah from New Jersey, Lara from Tennessee. Look at this, fabulous. And we've got Wendy from Sandy Hook Promise. Yes, okay, we've got Kara from Colorado, Liz from New Jersey. Fantastic. Venetia from Georgia. Fantastic. So please keep typing in the chat as we go. That our presenter may ask you some questions, but also as you have any questions or comments as we go, please type those in the chat, because this session is really about a communication, a conversation with you. And this session is about engaging and empowering the voices of all students. And this session is being organized by SEL for New Jersey. And to kick off the session, I'd like to turn it over to one of the leaders of SEL for New Jersey, Bill Trusheim.
Thank you, Jim. It's my pleasure today to put this session up for you, talking about student participation. And I'd like to introduce our presenter, Patrick Fennell. Patrick is a friend of mine and a colleague. We've done a lot of work together, and I know you're going to enjoy his session. Patrick believes that the lens through which a person sees themselves and the world around them empowers them to define and achieve success. His mission is to assess schools to create the environment where stakeholders collaboratively work together so that all students thrive to be an equitable and an inclusive community. He attains his mission and sustainability results through his ABCD principle: attitude, awareness, accountability, and better choices, which lead to destiny. His passion led to the founding of Empowerment Solutions, LLC in 2004, and the nonprofit organization Empowerment Institute in 2006. These dynamic companies have been the vehicle of change through which he has facilitated trainings, workshops, and mentoring programs for children, school teachers, administrators, parents, and the community at large. As a result, he has empowered people of all ages and backgrounds to learn from each other, gain an appreciation for one another, and fulfill their purpose at school and in life together. Patrick is really coming to you today as a consultant and working in schools in New Jersey through the School Culture and Climate Initiative. And today's particular session really is focused on the work that he's done in Sparta, New Jersey, in the middle school. And this, of course, is really relevant to me because two of my grandsons go there. And so, of course, I'm very interested, as always, in the work that Patrick does. In addition to that, he's an adjunct instructor at the Academy for SEL in Schools. That's the instructional side of it. That's through Rutgers University and also St. Elizabeth. And he continues to do this work throughout the state of New Jersey and now nationally. So it's my great pleasure to introduce to you Patrick Fennell.
Thanks a lot, Bill. I appreciate the introduction. Thank you, Jim, as well. I'm excited to be here and spend some time with all of you and kind of leading this conversation. Now, as we go, if in the chat, I would love for you to add, if there's something that we talk about, maybe you have an aha moment, or maybe you have a question or a comment, I'd love to see that in the chat so that we can kind of keep this conversation going. So with no further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So we'll put some slides up and start this conversation. So engaging and empowering the voice of all students, that is our topic for today. Bill already talked about the companies that I've founded and the work that I do. My ABCD principle, attitude, awareness, accountability leads to better choices, and better choices lead to our collective destiny, the plan and the purpose for our lives. Also, like Bill said, representing School Culture and Climate Initiative at the Center for Human and Social Development at St. Elizabeth University in Morristown, New Jersey. 4 different areas in which we do the work there, which is school climate assessment and improvement process. So kind of looking at a 3-year process of being able to assist and support schools. There's also a school support network, which allows schools to come together and be supportive of each other. Professional development that happens there, and also the school climate and assessment lab, so that you can use surveys and understand the findings and the data and make some data influenced decisions. Now, the school climate assessment and improvement process, or the SCAPE process, is based on the work of Dr. Maurice Elias, who is one of the co-founders of SEL for US. SCAPE has worked with 125 schools. And so a lot of what we're talking about today is based on the experiences that we've had and kind of pulling out some best practices. So as we move into it, our agenda is going to be relatively simple. I want to define this idea of youth voice. I want to think about how we consider all voices, because ultimately, if we want to enhance and illuminate voices, we want to make sure that we are including all the voices within the school community. I then want to focus a little bit on some of the important elements of the process, because there is a way that we do this consistently. So kind of looking at some key elements of the process, determining some specific empowerment strategies for youth and youth voice. And then it wouldn't be proper to talk about youth voice if we didn't hear from students themselves. And so I have a video that we will end with today that kind of gives some perspective from youth themselves and how they are being, how it feels to be involved and included and valued in this process. Right. So we know we're all here on SEL Day talking about SEL. Student voice is connected directly to the 5 domains that CASEL often talks about, as far as self-awareness, self-management, making responsible decisions, building relationships, and being socially aware. All of those things are directly connected to student voice. And so then the question then becomes, well, how do we enhance student voice so that we can use all of these domains to help prepare students for life? And so when we look at it, I want to just define youth voice. So when we think about what youth voice actually is, it's about providing youth with the support and the skills, right? So stopping there for a moment. Support means that often we find ways to support students to do the things that we want them to do, the way that we want them to do. So true support says that I need to understand where they want to go, what they're trying to accomplish, and help them to achieve that. right? So we want to be supportive, but we also want to develop the skills that are necessary. In order to express myself, there are certain skills that I'm going to need, whether it's active listening or whether it is being able to be assertive in my communication, just a number of things that we would develop as far as skills are concerned in order to express my own perspectives, to contribute to ideas, to identify shared values. What are some of the things that are important to all of us? And when we do that, it helps us to make better decisions, to solve problems, and to create positive change. Now, when we move into actual specific elements of youth voice, right, there are some key elements that I want to kind of put out there and kind of have you think a little bit about them. One is that we want to invite and welcome every voice, right, that we want to be inclusive. Often you hear about when we talk about inclusivity, it's not just being invited to the dance, but it's not just being asked to come to the dance, but it is being invited to dance. So having a place where I fit and where I belong and being included, including every voice, right? It's also about creating a sense of trust and belonging. Now, I don't know about you, but when we talk about trust, it's really the core and the foundation of the relationships that we build. And so if we are going to have effective youth voice, it means that we have to be able to build and develop that trust. Any relationship that doesn't have trust means that I don't feel like I can truly share what I think and what I feel. So establishing trust and that sense of belonging become critical. Another key element is to embrace the mindset of youth ability, right? So ability being their talents, their skills, and their aptitude, but also of their capability, that they have the power to do certain things. And when I think power, power isn't based on a title. Power is based on the ability to get something done. And so I think as educators and as leaders, it's important for us to embrace the mindset that students and youth are able and that they're capable. Final two, this fourth one will be to value youth voice, that we don't want it to be a check the box situation, but we want to be able to truly look to hear from students because we value what they say and what they have to share. And then finally, it's about the ability to grasp the opportunity, not only to teach students, but also to learn. That when I open myself up to youth voice, now I begin to learn some things from a different perspective, which makes me a better educator and also allows me the ability to teach and be taught. So as we move into the next piece of this, it's really about the impact of culture and climate, thinking about how does the culture and the climate of our school impact what it is that students do and be able to build up specific elements of their voice. Now, when I have a little quote here that I wanted to share, when a flower does not bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. In the chat, I would love if you would share kind of some of your thoughts about what does that actually mean to you? Talking about this flower not blooming. What does that mean? What does this statement mean to you? And then we'll talk a little bit more about culture and climate and how it impacts and enhances student voice. I know there is a slight delay, so as they're starting to come up, we'll kind of share some thoughts. Because ultimately, the culture and the climate that we create is going to foster the development of student voice. As those are coming up, I know they'll be coming up shortly. We're going to share a little bit. Okay, so I see a few things coming through. Stephanie says that we need to understand the impact of things around us and not always blame the child for challenges. Absolutely, right? That when we think about it, if we're going to be effective, we have to take accountability for what it is that we create. I see a few more. We have one from from Kate, we're often quick to assume the student is the problem, right? And I think that what happens is that when we have that mindset that the student is the problem, we attempt to fix it, right? So we're not trying to fix students. Ultimately, we are trying to create the environment in which we're able to support students. Another couple, I think we have quite a few coming in, and I appreciate you sharing all of those things. Mark says that we have to make sure the culture and climate provides the nutrient-rich environment for students and staff to thrive. Absolutely, right? That we have to make sure that that climate is one that is conducive to learning and providing the ability for students to express their voices. If high school students in class do not understand physics and ask their teacher not to follow the curriculum, but to take a look at the basics as they have a huge gap and do not understand it, what to do. So I think with this particular question, let me read it again real quick. Ultimately, I think we're going to talk very specifically about how we can develop the ability in the classroom for voices to be able to come forward. And so I'm gonna put a pin there, and I'm gonna come back to how do we actually build student voice within the classroom. All right. So when we're thinking about it, and I appreciate all of the responses, when we think about student voice and how it's fostered within the school culture and climate, a lot of times we think about culture and climate, and we tend to use those two terms interchangeably. But the truth is that they are two totally different things. Climate is the environment, the feel of the school. And often when you walk into the door, you can feel the climate of a school. And truth be told, the climate of each classroom can also be different. And if we're really digging a little bit deeper, we also recognize that the environment and the feel of the classroom can change from moment to moment. So climate is something that is constantly moving and changing and evolving. Culture is about the history of the school, the identity of who we are as a collective group and how we do things here. It's focused on our beliefs and our values and identifying what our shared values are. Now, ultimately, I've listed a few things as far as how culture and climate impact the school community. And I'd love for you to put in the chat, when you think about the environment and feel of your school and the history and how you do things at your particular school, how does culture and climate impact your school community? A few things that tend to be common things that we think about and share are just the relationships themselves. We know that if we're going to enhance student voice, that we have to be able to build positive relationships, not only from teacher to student, but student to student, also from teacher to teacher as well, and also with the rest of the stakeholders, parents, administrators, community. It's going to impact how we work together, that sense of belonging that we have. And it's also going to impact how we are able to identify and be able to validate other people's achievements and what it is that we're able to collectively do together. Now, if we are building that culture and climate that is conducive to building and enhancing student voice, a consideration is that we have to think about how do we consider and create the environment for all voices to be heard. When we talk about social emotional learning, I think there are times in which we have some voices that may be amplified and heard over others. And so when we talk about considering all voices, we have up here this diversity wheel. And I'm not sure if you are able to see all of the words on there, but I'll kind of narrate this a little bit. If we look at personality, right? Personality being the center of this wheel. And then in the green area, you have some internal dimensions, everything from age, race, gender or gender identity, ethnicity, physical and mental characteristics and abilities, and sexual orientation being in that green piece. And in the yellow and the pink, you have things like geographic location, income, religion, your educational background. In the pink, there are things that tend to refer to some things for adults as far as work location and seniority. But if we think about it from a student perspective, it could be seniority. What year am I at the school? If I'm in a middle school, am I in 6th grade? Am I in 8th grade? Perspectives are going to be different, right? If I'm in high school, am I a freshman? Am I a junior? Am I a senior? Right? So we have different perspectives based on our age and experience. What I'd like to hear from you in the chat, when we look at these different dimensions of diversity, the green area, age, race, gender, sexual orientation, physical and mental characteristics and abilities, and ethnicity, those things have to do with our identity, how we see ourselves and how other people see us. Often what happens is that when we look at a person, we often focus on and tend to make judgments about people based on what we see as it pertains to that area of the green wheel. The green wheel is really talking about our identity. Now, when we think about identity, there are times in which students can feel heard, or students can feel like they're not being heard based on how we approach people, based on what we see as it pertains to their identity. Now, what I'd like to do, I have a few things that I wanted to be able to share with you. We also have some comments that are coming up as well, and I appreciate those too. That we do have to respect people or students where they are, and be able to create that safe and supportive environment that is able to embrace all identities and how people see themselves. Now, what I want to do is, when we talk about identity and voice, identity is not just about gaining knowledge and skills, right? That if we're going to be able to amplify student voice, it is the recognition that students are constantly becoming. They're not where they want to be ultimately, but they are growing into themselves. That second bullet, we're talking a little bit about how we are constantly and continuously engaged in this process of being able to integrate their experiences, whether it's happening at school, whether it's happening in their personal lives, or because we live in this social media instant update type of lives, that outside events are always shaping how students see themselves and how they see each other based on where they are right now, but also about who and what they want to become later on. Now, when we think about identity, identity is going to influence how students see themselves and others, how they make their choices, how they make decisions, how they solve problems. My question, and I have a couple questions in the chat, and on the screen, I would love for you to put in the chat some of your answers to some of these questions. One is, what is the impact when students are not seen or heard for the way that they identify themselves? Right? And so we'll kind of start there, recognizing that it becomes critical and important to be able to recognize that when students aren't seen or heard the way they see themselves, it has an impact. So I'd love for you to put in the chat, what are some of the things, or what are some of the impacts for students when they're not seen or heard the way they see themselves, or for the voice that they want to express and to share. And as you're putting that up, there was a question from Kim asking where the wheel comes from. The wheel is actually an expanded and adapted from the Loden wheel that was created a while ago from I guess a psychologist called Loden. So she shared a lot of different elements of how we see ourselves and those things that make us different. All right. So as we're talking about how students are impacted when they don't feel like they're being heard or seen, frustrated, angry, I see reduced self-esteem. What else are we seeing here? They don't engage, they check out, 100% true, right? And if we want to engage voice, if people aren't seen or heard for how they see themselves, they tend to move away. It feels unsafe, right? I feel like I can't trust people around me because I'm not seen for who I am. It can absolutely, Wesley shares that it can absolutely turn into self-medicating, finding different ways that are unhealthy to be able to be accepted, to feel appreciated, right? There's no real connection to the school. And if we add to that, there's no real connection with the people within the school as well. Right? A lot of great things there. I appreciate all of that. Impacts self-worth, feeling disconnected, disengaged, feeling isolated, can turn to self-harm. Absolutely. Frank is actually the principal at Sparta Middle School. We're going to share a little bit from some of the things that are happening at Frank's school, but students are less likely to engage with the adults. Trish shares that they are, where to go? Makes the students doubt who they are and how they, makes the students doubt who they feel that they are. I'll get it right in a second. Yeah, thank you, Trish. Trish is actually at the School Culture and Climate Initiative, one of the co-directors there, along with Liz Warner. So I appreciate Liz sharing, or Trish sharing as well. Second question there is, if we really step back and reflect a little bit, we also recognize that whether it's purposefully or unintentionally, there are times that we stifle, attempt to control, or silence the voices within the school community. In the chat, I would love for you to share what are some things that we do, whether it's most often it's unintentional, but what are some things that we do within the school community that can leave students feel like their voices are stifled, they're attempted to be controlled, or that they're being silenced altogether? I think it's important for us to be able to identify some of those barriers or challenges that we do unintentionally or that we don't always recognize, so that we can be purposeful to move beyond that. Right. So in the chat, like I said, I'd love for you to share some thoughts. Wesley has shared, I think pertaining to the last question, that we also lose some sensitivity for others, that when we don't identify people and when they're not seen as how they see themselves, it does feel like there is no sensitivity. People don't care about me, my feelings, or anything else that is connected with that. In the chat, if, like I said, you can share some of your thoughts about how we stifle voices, or how we feel like, or how students can feel like they're being controlled or silenced. Nicole shares there's limited time for them to share out. Absolutely. So I think often we are so stuck on the time frame that I have certain things that I want to do within the classroom within a certain time frame. And when I feel like my time is running out, I stop listening to people and responding to students' voices because I have my own agenda about things that need to get done. We also have, I have heard teachers ask students to speak English only when they're speaking to their friends. A fantastic example, right? That students are going to share in the way that they share and feel comfortable. And sometimes it's our own insecurities that try to keep them from sharing some of their thoughts. Right? Some other things that are coming up, not involving students in establishing classroom routines and rules, and that Bill is sharing that that this can happen when we teach subjects and not students. Love that comment, right? Love that. That often we are so focused on the subject, or where we want to teach what I want to teach, as opposed to being able to connect with students and be able to develop them and their voices. Maria shares that when their ideas and needs are not being implemented and addressed, absolutely feels like my voice is stifled because I don't feel like my needs are being met. All right. Choosing the A students to be the representatives for the student body. That's a fantastic comment as well there, Wesley. And we're going to talk a little bit more in a few minutes about the importance of bringing diverse voices to the table. And we often want to pick our A students or our student council students or peer leaders, and sometimes leaving out the voices of those who may not show up in the same way as others, but still need to be heard. Let's go ahead and move on to our next piece, the important elements of the process. So as we talk about the process, there is a process in which we're able to create this culture and climate for students to be able to feel heard, to feel valued, and to be able to be seen. Now, when we talk about the elements of the process, I'm referring to that SCAPE process that I referred to earlier, and I want to share a little bit from an experience from Sparta Middle School in New Jersey, right? So part of a best practice to be able to develop and build student voices is the creation of a culture and climate team, right? And so the purpose of this team is to help people to feel valued and cared for and respected and supported. Now, the best practice is often, I think, what we tend to do. We create a team that is made up of the adults in the building to address issues. But if we're going to be able to truly impact the culture and climate of the school, how can we do that when we leave out the voices of students, right? They have to be a part of that conversation. And so when we do that, the purpose of this culture and climate team is to clarify values, right? Not individual values, but shared values. What is it that is important to all of us? What do we believe? How do we behave? And those things are going to guide how we make decisions. But the team also is a part of creating a vision for the school, a mental picture of where we're going. And then ultimately the mission talks about how do we get there? How do we create these strategies in order to make that happen? Now, when we talk about this culture and climate team in Sparta, we created this culture and climate team, started with the adults, and then we went through a process of bringing students onto the team to be able to interact and be a part of these conversations that are also connected directly to developing social emotional learning. Now, 5 focus areas that will help us to develop student voice. The first one is creating a diverse culture and climate team. Right, Wesley had mentioned earlier about not just A students, but in this diverse culture and climate team, when we look back and think back to what we talked about earlier as far as diverse students and their identities, bringing on students, and I know that there are times in which we have homogenous schools that may have maybe similar races or similar as far as background, but there are so many different elements of being diverse, right? Special education students, where students live, age of students, gender and gender identity, all of those things become critical and important. And I think Sparta spent a lot of time in being able to bring a number of diverse students to the table. The second thing that becomes important is to be able to disaggregate the survey data, right? So creating culture and climate surveys and being able to facilitate those for the adults and the students within the building, that's important. But being able to identify what voices are feeling different than others, which voices are feeling like they might be stifled or not being recognized or heard or seen. Right. So it becomes important to be able to disaggregate data so that I can identify those that may have been left behind or maybe felt like they've been pushed aside. Third focus area is to be able to focus on our vision and our values. Vision says, where are we going? But the shared values say what's important to all of us. And spending time to develop that was a major piece of what has really brought this Sparta team and the school together, because they are identifying what's important to them and what that looks like, but having those conversations. And I think sometimes we make assumptions about what should be important or what it is that's important to me or to us, but sometimes we don't talk about what does that actually look like in action and in practice. Next piece would then be creating, communicating, implementing, and then adjusting the plan. Having students be a part of that conversation helps them to recognize and to understand that sometimes, yeah, we can create a plan, we can talk about it, or the importance of talking about it and sharing. And let me just kind of pull it back and step back there just for 1 second. I think part of something that's happening right now in Sparta with this particular team is that the students had, along with the adults, created a vision for the school, what the school is, some aspirational pieces of what the school looks like and where it is, what it is that they want to achieve. And then we talked about, well, how do we get people to know what that is? And so having conversations together, they determined that the students, as students, we want to go into each homeroom and share the vision and get some feedback from students about what it is that we're doing and how we want to move forward together. So the students went in, they created their own script about what they were going to say and what they were going to do and how they were going to present that. And when they presented it, we came back and talked about it afterwards, and they discovered that some students were having a hard time understanding what we really meant by this and how it impacts them. And so we had the ability to have that conversation now about how do we make the vision simple? How do we make it so that people can buy into it and connect with it? And so we had a very rich conversation, which helped students on the team to be able to understand and actually put into practice and understand that being able to cast a vision and to have people follow it is something that is not easy to do, and that there are certain things that help to make it actionable and to help other students to be able to engage and be involved in it, because as a small group, they can't change the culture by themselves. And so part of this process helped them to learn how to adjust, how to implement things that we talk about. The final piece that becomes important to be able to focus on is adult SEL. We often talk about how SEL is important for students to be able to problem solve and learn and to be able to connect with others and be aware of themselves and be more socially aware. But the truth of the matter is that if the adults in the building don't have the same abilities and capabilities, it makes it difficult for students to have a voice when adults feel like they don't have a voice either. Sparta Middle School does a phenomenal job in empowering their teachers and counselors to be able to try things, to move things forward in ways that are helpful and productive. I got an amen from Melanie, right? I think that's important as well, right? We see that, I'm sorry, you can put that last one back up. Or actually that was from another one. Yeah. So I think the adult SEL becomes a critical element that sometimes goes overlooked. Sometimes we don't always give it the credence that's necessary. And if adults don't feel like they have a voice, students don't either. Right. There's our amen. All right. So our last couple pieces before I give you a little bit of thought from a student that we have. Okay. Got you. Are some student empowerment strategies, right? So it's one thing to be able to say, all right, student empowerment is important. SEL is important. It's one thing to say this important, but I wanted to be able to share just a few strategies and a little bit of reflection to think about how well we're doing it and what are some specific things that we can do. Right, so if I move to this next slide, just really quickly, 4 dimensions of empowerment. And for me, my favorite definition of empowerment is to lead others to lead themselves. And if we are leading others to lead themselves, in order to do that, we have 4 different areas that become important to consider. The first one is meaningfulness, right? What we do, it should be meaningful. It should feel relevant. How many times have we heard students say, what's the purpose of this? I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense. Why do I have to put that time in, right? So meaningfulness is critical. The second piece will be competence. We want to develop and build the skills so that students have the ability and capability to do the things that they set out to do. The third one is impact, right? And thank you, Bill and Liz, right? That we do want students to lead themselves. The third element of empowerment is impact, right? How are we able to take what we have and to use it and to implement it on a consistent basis? The final one is choice, that if we're going to enhance student voice, they have to have the ability to make choices in a relevant way that lead to agency, the recognition that they have the ability to make decisions that are going to impact their lives and the lives of others in a positive way. So a few different areas that I wanted to focus on as far as empowerment, and just a little bit of reflection for you. 3 questions up there as far as reflection. I'd love to get some of your thoughts about some of this reflection or some of these things as far as maybe what you're doing well, or some things that maybe you have not considered as far as reflection that could be helpful to be able to enhance student voice. So some of the things that I wanted you to kind of think about: are students being reflective in their learning moment to moment, or are they passive? Right. So are they able to reflect on what it is and the importance of it, or are they just having to wait for somebody to tell them what they should think? Are we setting aside time for students to reflect? Or is time being pushed aside when it feels like we don't have enough time to fulfill our own agenda? Bill shares that reflection is a great way to cement the importance of what they've learned. Absolutely. Right. So when I reflect on it, I am able to take it in. It becomes a part of me, and it becomes important to what it is that I'm learning. Last one is reflection is reflection a part of our daily routine? Ultimately, what we're really saying here is that we want students to be able to create a positive habit of reflecting, not just in the classroom, but outside of the classroom. And when I reflect, it helps me to be able to understand and be able to share my thoughts and what it is and my perspective, because I've thought about what it is that I'm doing and how I kind of put it all together. Have a comment that just came up in the chat that when I assign a task, I give some options to accomplish their task successfully. It can be an oral presentation, a written report, an essay, and your students appreciate it, right? I appreciate you sharing that. There are many different ways that students can express their voices, and when we give them choice about how to express it, they're able to do it in a positive way. I have a comment from Frank as well, that reflection is critical in the learning process, whether it's in the classroom or in real life experience, without a doubt. And I think that the ability to transfer those experiences are transferable. We're able to make it relevant in the class and outside the classroom, and that's when we're able to really build success. The second piece will be students as teachers, right? Another way that we're able to empower students is to have students as teachers. Are we giving them an opportunity to articulate their knowledge? Are they given a chance to help others to understand the concept? That last one here, are they able to demonstrate their strategies and assist others with similar learning styles? What I found often is that in the classroom, sometimes we pair students based on their level of learning, right? So A students together, B students, C students. I think it becomes also another way to be able to empower those voices, is that because we have different learning styles, some students are visual, some students are more hands-on, some students are what I would call read writes, where they're going to read, they're going to take some notes, they're going to write down some other things, they're going to continue that process. It helps them to learn. I think it becomes important to be able to group students based on their learning styles, so that no matter if they're an A student, a B student, or trying to kind of build up their development, they're able to learn because they're with each other and share and help each other because of a similar style. Wesley says it depends on the student. Some are very engaged in solving problems. Others want to process it and then do. Absolutely. So I think considering how students learn also can impact student voice. Last couple, one is self-assessment, right? So the ability for students to assess themselves, their individual goals, how they're able to assess themselves based on criteria, gaining and providing effective feedback, another skill that becomes important, not just in the classroom now, but as they get older and move into other aspects of their lives, college, jobs, whatever it is that they're doing, being able to provide feedback to others, another major skill that impacts voice, and that ultimately they are able to integrate assessment into the process. We've been talking about student voice. A couple considerations there. How often are we asking students for their opinions? Because the truth be told, student voice requires courage from the adults, because we don't always know what they're going to say, right? That bullet about, do you allow them to provide you feedback? Sometimes I don't ask them because I don't want to hear about what I'm not doing well or what it is that I need to improve upon. But the truth is that when I consider, honor, and value their feedback, not only does it help me to be a better teacher, but it also helps students to be able to feel confident in their voices. Last one that I want to share before we hear from our student and wrap this up for today, involving students in real issues. Students are seeing things that are happening around the world constantly, and we have to give them an opportunity to understand it, express it, and learn from each other and identify what's true, what's real, and express my opinions about things that are impacting me that may be happening outside of the school. Right. And so as we wrap this up, I wanted to share from a student from Sparta Middle School, Evie. And Evie in this video is sharing some of her experiences and what it is that has impacted her as far as being a part of this culture and climate team and what she's taking away from it. So if we can bring Evie up and have her share some of her thoughts, and then we'll get ready to close it out.
Hi, I'm Evianis, and I go to Sparta Middle School, and I'm currently in 8th grade. One thing that led my interest into joining the school climate and culture team was that I've always been very interested in trying to change the way that the school operates. And as a student here, I like the fact that I have the chance to speak out about how we feel and give the staff an idea of how we as students work and what we go through as students here. My participation has impacted me and my perspective of the school because it kind of changed the way that I see other staff members, such as the principal, my past teachers, and my current teachers, because they also work with me in this committee. They're not always in full like school, professional business mode. They have a really fun side that they get to show to us when we're in like meetings and stuff. As for how it's impacted myself, I feel like I can do something good for the school, and I feel like now I have a sense of leadership and how I can lead other situations that might happen outside of like being in the committee. What I've learned is I've learned a lot about how to be a leader and how to be creative and come up with different ideas that I can use and that I can share with the staff and my fellow students, my peers, on how we can change things and how we can fix things that might be a little bit on the more problematic side. Things that have worked well are coming up with ideas that make the students work with the staff. So whether it's for the future or we're going to do it in the next 2 weeks. One challenge that we faced is staying professional sometimes while giving messages in front of our fellow classmates and stuff, because you'll get laughter and that might turn into a little bit of laughter from our side, trying to lighten the mood for the presentation. But it's still worked super well because we've had the opportunities to kind of interact with the different sides of the school and the different people who go here. One thing that surprised me in the process was how compliant everyone has been, like opening up to different ideas. So the students have really shown their like creative side in kind of like giving their ideas, and then the staff has been like really kind about accepting our ideas and working through it, like I guess kind of listening to our ideas and putting them into motion. Why I think that we should be involved in developing the student climate and culture, so like even other students in other schools, is it gives them the opportunity to finally change something that they might believe is not the best way to do things in their school, or they can shape their school to be the way that they want it to be. To be a student leader, I feel very privileged and I feel very excited to have been given this chance and this opportunity. And it's kind of like, it's something that I've always wanted to do. And now it kind of gives me like a sense of joy that I've been given the opportunity. What I anticipate this experience will kind of impact my future, I think it'll give me the experience in leading and presentational skills to really like put these out into the world. So whatever job that I pursue, I think that these skills will help me a lot. And anything that I want to share would be I'm very excited to see where this committee will go in the future. And I really hope that other students would like to have the chance to join. Thank you.
All right. So we've heard from Evie, very critical to be able, and I think there are a lot of things that kind of come up with me, and I know that our time is ending now, but it's amazing what it is when we give students the opportunity, as Evie talked about. Imagine what it's like when I get the opportunity and how it is that I'm able to move forward when I feel respected, valued, and heard. So I thank you all so much for all of your participation, all of your comments, and I appreciated having the opportunity to talk with you a little bit.
Thank you so much, Patrick Fennell. That was a very powerful session and wonderful ideas from all the participants. And what a powerful video to end with. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And as we're closing out, everyone think for a second and type in the chat, what is one key takeaway for you from this session? So think about that. What is one key takeaway for you from this session? And you might have more than one, but at least one, put it in the chat. What we're going to be heading over to next is the next session will be SEL Goes to University, how higher education is engaging social emotional learning. So as we're thinking about today's students, tomorrow's leaders, we have young people in universities, colleges and universities who are in the midst of really dramatic changes and the challenges of those institutions as the needs of students, businesses, and societies keep evolving. The SEL needs are mounting as institutions grapple with supporting students, faculty, staff, and their communities in the face of all that complexity. So this panel is going to talk about what's needed, what's working, what's next. So as soon as this session ends, you can just click on that link, go right on over. The next session will start right at the top of the hour. We're going straight through to 5 p.m. Eastern with these amazing sessions like this one with Patrick Fennell and SEL for New Jersey. So thank you all so much, and we will see you over in the next session.